Hey everybody, good afternoon. This is Pastor Ong here. I trust that you have had a good weekend, had a good service, and God has blessed you to the Word of God today, this weekend. Well, we are glad that you are able to join us, and every one of you know very clearly today's talk is about unpacking the uncertainties that have to do with the COVID-19 vaccine. Approximately 6 to 7 months ago, some people have talked to me about the possibility of holding such a forum so that our pastors and can know what is it all about and have the correct information. But I thought it would be better to wait for a little bit longer. The reason is because the information that came in are very scattered, and the voices that are carrying those information do not have a lot of credibility that I know of. And I also have asked people, different people, medical practitioners, pastors and leaders, political leaders, about some of these individuals that were carrying this information. And not many of them were impressive, and not many of them have my confidence. Well, today is different. Our country is now on a full-fledged program of vaccinating the entire country. Today, we have a very, very qualified man, Dr. Amar Singh. He's a man who have been used by God and by the government and has spoken in many churches, denominations, NGOs, and also government-related department on the subject of COVID-19 and also on the subject of the vaccine. I had a privilege of speaking with him for a little while recently while we were preparing for this particular talk. And he said something that really excited me. He said, Pastor Ong, I must be allowed to be honest. And I told him, just as I always tell my own members in the church that they must allow me to be honest, I will expect my doctor, Dr. Amar Singh, to be honest as well. So I was very excited when he said that, because what we need is honesty and truth. He comes as a man who not only knows the situation, but he's very updated. He knows the real issues and what are the important considerations. So I hope you open up your heart and mind as he come in a little while. And just before he come in, our moderator today is Pastor Wong Ying Ming, Senior Pastor of Subanjaya Assemblies of God. She is a very experienced moderator, and she's also a member of the National Executive of the Assemblies of God. So Dr. Amar, welcome to our talk, and thank you for taking time to speak to us. And now back to Pastor Wong Ying Ming as you lead us. God bless us.
Thank you, Pastor Ong, for the introduction and for opening up this session. And welcome once again, everyone joining us online. And we want to make full use of the time that we have. So we will go straight into some of the questions that we want Dr. Amar to address. And so permit me to just share screen first so that even as I ask the question, you will be able to follow along. The first question has to do with the need for vaccination. And we know that the pandemic has been around for 1 whole year now, and it has affected the health and economy of the world population. And however, statistics show that 98% of the people will get well. And in Malaysia itself, the death rate is less than 1%. So the big question is there a real need for the vaccination? More so, we come to understand that vaccination itself does not guarantee that the person will not be infected with COVID-19. And what about using alternative approach like boosting our immune system through some vitamins or zinc, etc., instead of having to be vaccinated? Over to you, Dr. Amar.
Thank you very much, Pastor Wong Yin Ming, and thank you, Pastor Ong. I think Pastor Ong has said more about me than necessary, and I'm just one of many colleagues who are trying to make sense of this whole thing, and I'm fortunate to belong to a group of national doctors who discuss a lot of these issues have been discussing extensively, and so I fall back on that. I also have a wife who's a doctor, and we talk a lot about what the data means for us. Let me share my screen. Let's talk about the questions that have been asked so far. Okay, can see the screen, Yin Ming? Can,
Yes.
good, all right. So we're trying to make some sense of all the information, and let's talk first about this question about, do we need the vaccine? And as I start, I want to say that the primary problem that we have, not just in Malaysia, but in the world, is a trust deficit. We don't trust things anymore like we used to in the past. We don't trust governments, health authorities, and so on. The second problem is that we have a huge volume of data. I read a lot, but I've never read so much in this last 1 year. Every day we read so many new things about COVID, about the vaccine, and we try and read the research as much as possible is coming out. And sometimes for the average individual, that can be quite confusing. Even for us, we're tough keeping up, very hard to keep up. And of course, it's damaged by fake news circulating. And quite often the fake news is damaging because there's an element of truth, but a lot of untruth as well inside it. I'll talk a bit about how to address that as well. So as Pastor Ong said, I'm going to give you a frank and honest opinion. I must say at this point, no one can know everything, and not everything is known. And when I don't know something, I will let you know. When I'm not sure, I will let you know as well. Okay. I believe that the key that we are missing still is that we're not listening enough to God and discerning what He is saying and all of this. And that is critical to me. And I spend a lot of time trying to listen to God to discern. I also want you to keep your eye on the big picture. There are small things that are going to irritate us and worry us, but the big picture is where we must keep our eyes on. I must say that I am a pediatrician, and I am supportive of vaccines in children. I have helped to bring measles, mumps, rubella, and Haemophilus influenza B into our national program. But I'm not somebody who supports all vaccines. I think there are limits to vaccines, and we must be clear about that. Now, some of the slides I'm going to show are going to be busy. They're largely for me, so you don't worry. They look busy, and I may skip a few, so not to worry about that. We can come back if someone needs them. Okay? So do we need the vaccine? So here's Malaysia's graph. Now, not everybody sees it in this format. In the first year, we took 1 year to reach 100,000. But in January, we took 1 month to reach 100,000. In February, another 1 month to reach 100,000. So we've escalated. Of course, we seem to have slowed down a little bit, but I don't think there's a real slowdown as yet. The UK scientific models that they have done for our country suggest that for every 1 that we pick up, we are missing 4. So if you look at this whole 300,000, you're probably looking at close to 1 million Malaysians who have been infected up to now. So it's not a small epidemic in Malaysia. It's sizable and growing faster. And of course, once you have more cases, you have more deaths. So the deaths have gone up. But as Yin Ming pointed out, the death rate is not very high. Our death rate actually is lower than some countries in the West, and it's remained largely at about this 0.3, 0.4% of the people who are infected who will die. Okay. Now, having said that, we must recognize the death rate is not even to different ages. The vast majority of people who get COVID-19 are young people, but the vast majority who die, more than 95%, are older than 50. And if you go to different age brackets, this is from the US, you will see that the mortality is very much higher. I'm in the tail end of this bracket, about to go into this bracket. And you can see once I'm in this bracket, 65 to 74, it's going to be 1 in about 20 people. And once you're much older, mortality is much higher. So although we say the mortality is low, you must recognize that once you're past 60, if you get COVID, your mortality is not the same as this 0.4. Second reason, that we need to think hard about the vaccination is something called long COVID, and not enough people in our country are thinking about long COVID. In industrialized countries, they talk about it all the time. And what is long COVID? There's a longer name for it, but most of us use long COVID. It is these people who recover after the infection, but don't recover fully. And recognize that it's not the severe people who get this alone. People who are very mild infection, younger people are also affected. It doesn't seem to pick older or younger people or severity. And what kind of symptoms these people get? Months later, they're still struggling to breathe properly. Some people cannot walk across the room. Some people who used to be able to think very well can't think very well. They got what is called brain fog. A lot of people got recurrent fevers, anxieties, or depression, and it persists for months and can permanently damage some organs, especially the lungs, the heart, and the brain. How common? Nobody really knows. The estimates in the world are 10 to 30% of all infected persons. I'm conservative. I would say probably 10% at least of people. And in Malaysia, we haven't really cataloged these individuals or followed them up adequately. Some for short term, some for very long term, and some are still persisting. So recognize that this is one reason the vaccine is important. And for most of us doctors, this is the thing that, is bigger impact to us than the deaths itself. So why vaccinate? We've got a lot of COVID. Our death rate may not be high, but it's elderly. Don't forget long COVID. And coming soon to many of us are going to be restrictions in our life. The government will impose restrictions whether we like it or not. Many governments are already talking about this. And the restrictions will be without vaccination. You want to visit your grandchild in another state, you may not be able to do without a vaccination. And finally, for me, the most compelling reason why I want to be vaccinated, I want to help those who cannot be vaccinated. There's some people who cannot get vaccinated, and they are probably going to get very severe COVID. They may be severely immunocompromised or going through cancer treatment. And the second thing is those who are vaccinated also, not everybody, not 100% are going to respond. So if we vaccinate, we're also going to help those who get vaccinated but don't respond. Okay, so this is probably the most important reason why we want to get vaccinated. Now, there are lots of other alternatives that people have been proposing, and I've heard a lot, I read much of what I can read about it, and these are some of the things that people talk about to do. Maybe I'll start with the bottom one. If you can reduce your weight, reduce your weight. It's a high risk factor if you get infected, so work on that right now. What about ivermectin, which has been touted by lots of people to be able to treat? Right now, all the total body of evidence, I'm not looking at hearsay, I'm not looking at anecdotal data, I'm looking at people who do studies and study this, looking at the impact on COVID, there's insufficient evidence. Some people say you may need higher doses, which may have side effects. Nobody's really sure if you take ivermectin every day whether it's going to prevent COVID in you. So currently, I would say there's insufficient evidence for this, and this is not one person saying this. Are health authorities in the US and UK saying this. Hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine, which were pushed by Trump, I think it's been dismissed. Steroids and this antiviral, remdesivir, are useful, but they're only useful for people who are very ill in hospital on oxygen or on a ventilator. You don't want to be taking these drugs if you're well. Zinc, not enough data right now to support it. And there's concern if you take it for long periods, you may affect your immune system. Vitamin C, again, used in very ill people on ventilator, but the evidence is still not good. Vitamin D, now that's a different story entirely. I'm not sure about this one. I want to say that I've looked at a lot of data, listened to people who presented the studies to us. People are looking a lot at vitamin D in hospital. I'm looking at vitamin D right now for you who haven't got COVID. Is taking daily vitamin D going to boost your immunity and decrease your risk of COVID and severe COVID? There is some suggestion for this truth. Why? Because COVID mortality in countries like ours is lower than in countries where there's not that much sunshine, in countries where they have temperate climates. So that's a very strong, compelling reason, but a lot of other data as well. So I want to suggest that you've got to keep your eye on this. And if you want to supplement vitamin D, make sure you use a dose that's not harmful, talk to your doctor. And if you got some kidney damage, you've got to be a little bit careful with it. So this is the only one that I would consider as something that may be possible. You may ask me, Amma, are you supplementing vitamin D? Yes, I am. I am supplementing myself with vitamin D, and so is my wife. But we use a very conservative dose. Having said that, these are things that work, and people are not adequately using them. Mask work. Ventilation is extremely important. Outdoor is fine, but indoors, you must be very careful with ventilation. Aircons do harm. You need to ventilate the room. You must keep your distance. You must know that most people are asymptomatic. Indoor, 1 to 2 meters is nothing. Outdoor is fine. Hand sanitation, some value, but vaccines, bigger value. I want to say something about masks now. The mask is the kind of mask, and the fit of the mask is very important. The fit is probably the most important thing. A lot of people run down cloth masks, but look at these wonderful leaders who got very good health systems. They all wear cloth masks, including this chap here. He's gone on to wear a double mask right now. She's gone on to wear occasionally N95, but most of them wear cloth masks. What am I doing? This is where I used to be on the left. Now I've migrated to this on the right. I use a very high quality fit nano weave mask. This one can be reused 10 times. Use an alcohol spray to sterilize it in between. It's the same mask from a different color, that's all. And I wear a face shield always. So does my wife wear a face shield, because we think that adds added protection. So we think this is probably the most valuable thing to us in preventing COVID right now on a day-to-day basis. And we use it even when we are cycling out outdoors. Okay, so I want to say again, as we finish this question, numbers may be coming down, but look what our Director General showed about infectivity. Infectivity is going up, so you can expect another wave to come. We've always expected COVID to come in waves. As people become more, wave goes up, people become more careful, wave comes down, people become more relaxed. So expect that a wave may come in a short while. So the principles to live by, everybody around you is positive and you got to protect yourself. You are positive and you don't want to give it to somebody else. Every old person is your mother, your father. Every young person is your sister, brother. And we want to protect them as much as we can. Yin Meng, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Amar, for that information and show us the need.
Just Amar is fine, Yin Meng.
Okay. Now, the next question we want to ask is really all about the COVID that people are concerned, right? And as you say, maybe we don't know enough. So we want to find out from you, can you enlighten us about, the different type of vaccine and really what are the differences? And of course, let us know about the effectiveness of the vaccine and how long does the immunity last?
All right. Thank you, Yin Meng. That's probably the most important question we want to deal with today about vaccines and their types and effectiveness. Now, this is a very simple diagram, but it talks about the 4 key types of different vaccines. Well, that's a 5th type. That's a toxoid vaccine like diphtheria and tetanus, and I'm not going to talk about that. Okay, but these are the 4 types of vaccines that are being developed right now. One is called the viral vector vaccines. What does it mean? We use some other virus that is harmless. We put inside some genetic material from COVID-19 virus. We inject it in the body. It stimulates antibody cells. Have we got previous viruses like this? Yes, the Ebola vaccine is designed on the same idea as well. So a number of the companies have moved to producing viral vector vaccines. The new vaccine, the one that has never been developed in the world before, is the mRNA vaccine that everybody is worried about. Here, we take a bit of the genetic material, the messenger RNA, the one that brings the message to produce antibodies. We just take that part out from the COVID-19 virus. We put it inside a lipid capsule, a small sort of fat globule, and then we inject that into the body. That fat globule, by the way, is the one that causes most of the allergic reactions right now in individuals, not the virus particle itself. So when we inject this, again, they stimulate us to produce antibodies. But I must say, they don't just produce antibodies, they also produce other kind of immune responses, what are called B and T cells, especially the T cells, which are very important. Then there's this old technology that's been used for a long time, which is used in measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, and polio. This is a technology where we take the whole virus, we either make it not able to do very much anymore, like measles, mumps, rubella is a live virus, but it's called a live attenuated. That means it can't really cause a severe illness, and we give that to you. Or in the case of COVID, we kill the virus, it becomes inactivated, it's killed, and then we give that to you. And by doing that, we expose you to the virus and the proteins, the spike proteins on top of the virus, the one that the body can recognize, and then we produce our immune response. So a number of companies are also doing that. And finally, I think 1 or 2 companies are working on a protein subunit where they use pieces of the COVID virus, like fragments of the protein of the virus, not the whole virus, but part of it, especially the spike protein, the one that's on the surface of the virus. This is the one that triggers our immune response. Have we done this before with other vaccines? Yes. The whooping cough vaccine, the HPV vaccine, the Haemophilus influenza B vaccine, all vaccines are designed in the same way. So these are the 4 key methods that are being used. You're going to see many more vaccines, and I'll talk about some of the vaccine development later. So here are the vaccines that we should keep an eye on. I know this is a very busy slide, but don't worry, I'm going to go through this slowly as we go along. And there's the Pfizer vaccine that everybody's heard about, the AstraZeneca vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, the Sinovac vaccine, the CanSino vaccine, the Sputnik V, and the Novavax, okay? And for us in our country, we've been committed to buying 5. These are the 5 that they've announced to us that we are buying. We're buying the Pfizer, the AstraZeneca, the Sinovac, the CanSino, and the Sputnik 5. Right now, I think only 2 are in the country, the Pfizer and the Sinovac are in the country. Three have obtained approval. The Pfizer, the AstraZeneca, and the Sinovac have obtained regulatory approval in our country to use. Okay, so let's look at these only, the ones that we are going to be using in our country. This list, of course, may grow in the future, because I think the government is also open to what's developing in the world. And if you look at these five vaccines, Pfizer is an mRNA vaccine, the type we talked about, where you put the messenger RNA, a bit of the genetic material of the virus, COVID virus, inside a fat globule and give it to you. Then the AstraZeneca, the CanSino Bio, and the Sputnik V are viral vectors. The AstraZeneca uses a chimpanzee common cold as the base virus that is a harmless virus. CanSino Bio uses a human adenovirus. The Sputnik uses two different human adenovirus. In fact, the Sputnik V Russian vaccine actually is two different vaccines. Dose one, you get one. Dose two, you get a different vaccine. Basically, because you use two different adenoviruses there. Okay, and finally, the Sinovac from China is an inactivated virus, the one where the virus is killed and then presented to us as a whole virus. Okay, now if you look at these, some require 2 doses, some require 1. Only the CanSino Bio is 1. The others are all 2 doses for them to work. Okay, the temperature storage is very variable in them. Both the Pfizer and the Sputnik require quite cold temperatures. The others require the normal temperatures we use for most vaccines are stored at 2 to 8 degrees. Now, the reason the Pfizer one requires this very cold temperature is because of that fat globule, which can actually, quickly break down if not stored properly. But notice that despite that, you can still store it for 30 days at the normal room temperature. Same with the Russian vaccine. So basically, if you've planned your vaccine campaign well, you bring a certain amount of dose there, use it up within 30 days, there's no real problem with storage for many of these. But having said that, you need the proper fridge to storage, and this will probably be in urban centers, many of these storage items. What about the capability of these vaccines? There's this word called efficacy, and this is a word that is seen in the clinical trial. It means when they do a trial, half the trial subjects, they give the vaccine, half the trial subjects, they don't give the vaccine, and then they see, what happens to them down the road. Do they get COVID or not? And then they calculate this figure from there. And of course, there's a range. In science, there's always a range because it depends on the numbers that we are doing, okay? Notice that some I've given largely in bold and some I put a question mark. Why have I put a question mark for Sinovac and CanSino Bio? Because currently, both of these companies have not published their data in international, reputable peer-reviewed journals, and we need that. When you publish there, people criticize your data, scientists look at it, and we make sense of it, whereas the other 3 have published their data, and that figures are reliable figures. So Pfizer 94, Zeneca 76, Sputnik 92, whereas the others uncertain right now. I'll come back to the other figures in a moment. But this is not the most important figure to keep your eye on. Now, if you look at, what we want to prevent, we would like to prevent us from getting infected by COVID. But the minimum we want to do is we don't want to get severe infections, the second red line here on the left. Okay, so people actually monitor this more than they monitor this. If you give you a vaccine and it can prevent you from getting severe symptoms, then we are very happy. Then you don't get long COVID, you don't get hospitalized, you don't die, you don't get organ damage. I think that we're very happy with. We can live with a mild COVID like a common cold. Some people say because we aim for this, these are not vaccines. Some fake news that I've been hearing saying, these mRNA vaccines are not vaccines. Not true. Look at BCG, for example. Many of us have received BCG, the vaccine against TB. Now, BCG is a vaccine that does not protect you against TB of the lungs. It protects you against TB of the brain and TB that spreads throughout your body. It's called miliary TB. I'm so grateful that it does that because as a pediatrician, I've seen many of that in children. It often attacks children and kills them. Very high death rate if you get TB in your brain. Now that's disappeared from our children. So children still might get lung TB, and you and I might get lung TB despite having BCG, but that doesn't mean we are not prevented from getting severe TB. So I think this fake news must stop. These are all vaccines, but we are aiming for this. So let's look at the efficacy of severe illness. This is the one that most scientists and researchers and public health people look at, and you can see they are pretty good. Once you're past 90, we are very happy. Okay, Sinovac and CanSino, from the data that's available from media reports and others, it looks like it's 100% as well. But the published ones are definitely 100%. Okay. Now, these efficacy ones are not entirely comparable because they are at different times and different places. These are a lot more comparable. Okay. So this is summarizing it all for you. Don't look at the blue, look at the red. The red is the efficacy from, look at the red, severe disease efficacy. And they're all largely past 90, which is fine. Again, I want to point out that these two are unpublished yet. Ultimately, of course, we want to see real world experience. I'll show some later to you. We want to see real world experience, and some data is coming up from Israel and UK and elsewhere. And that data will tell us how effective this vaccine is in the real world. Okay. Now, you may ask me, the Sinovac, since it's already approved, what is it like? In the Brazilian study, it was 51%. In Turkey, it was 83% for the red one. I'm not sure. The blue one, for the blue one. But the red one is 100%. Okay, so there's still some concern about this. Now, many countries have licensed different vaccines. You may be interested in Sinovac. Sinovac's only been licensed by about 17 countries, including Hong Kong and Malaysia inside that. Singapore has yet to license the vaccine. They're waiting for more data. I listened to their ministers and their health authority talk recently, and they said they're asking the vaccine maker for more data. One reason they're doing that is this comment that was made recently by our own minister. Is definitely clear that the Sinovac vaccine data for people above 60 is still not there. In the limited data that we have obtained, which is from press release and other online discussions that we've had, we know that the numbers of people who are tested above 60 is still not sufficient. So we're not sure whether we should use this vaccine in above 60, and we're waiting for the Ministry of Health to give us an idea, okay, about that. How long will the vaccine protect us? I'm sorry, this answer is not ready yet. People can tell you at least 4 months and probably 6 months, okay? Even how long are you going to be infected? Say after a COVID infection is right now only about 6 months. We know that sometimes you can get reinfected. We know that booster doses may need to come because there may be mutants. And we know not everybody may respond to the vaccine. So right now, what we can tell you that the antibodies will last at least 6 months, probably much longer. Most of us expect it's going to last for a year or two, but they may need for a booster for mutant vaccines. Back to you again, Yin-Ming.
Thank you. I hope that many of us will have a better understanding now about the different type of vaccine, right? And understand a little bit more about the efficacy. And we have two more questions that are related to the vaccine itself. And let me go on to do these two questions. What about the safety issue? I think this is a big question for most people. And allergies, side effects. What about those with pre-existing medical condition? Will the vaccination kind of trigger it off, or make it worse? And is it true that ladies have more side effect than men? And what about any ethical issue related to this type of vaccine, especially the mRNA vaccine?
Thank you very much, Yin-Ming. Let me carry on with the slides and cover those issues. Okay, let me cover the ethical issues first. I was talking to a Catholic group and they asked this question about fetal cells. Now, the vaccines don't contain any fetal cells. Now, the fetal cell lines are used in vaccine and drug production. They've been used for a very long time, more than 40 years. They were taken from 2 legally aborted fetuses, taken from the stem cells. These are cells that are still undifferentiated. They can be grown quite easily. And then cell lines were cultivated over decades. And many drugs and vaccines have used this technology. I suspect most of you who have used drugs and vaccines have actually used these cell lines from this. But the cell lines don't exist inside. They used to test the vaccines to make sure they work, because they're human cell lines. They can be used to test. You can't test it on animal cell lines. So I think even the Vatican has come out saying that you can use these vaccines in good faith, right? What about this question, which many people are worried about? They're worried that somehow the mRNA vaccine will introduce some sort of, message into our cells, or, the mRNA message might even insert some sort of, a tracking device inside us, and this is some plan from Bill Gates. I've seen a lot of that kind of rumors around. Now, so it's a messenger RNA they've taken out. They've actually, seen the whole genome of this virus, and people are very kind to have shared. I mean, we're so glad our Chinese colleagues share that. People have sequenced the whole genome, taken out only this section. Okay, it's a temporary message. It dies very, very quickly. Enters a cell. It stimulates one thing, producing the spike protein. At the same time, as I said, that will stimulate a whole cascade of other immune responses, especially the T cell. It doesn't enter our cell nucleus and doesn't combine with our DNA. So that's the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines which use the mRNA. Okay, there's a very nice YouTube where somebody taken a lot of pain to explain this in great detail using a whiteboard. Okay, and you may want to snapshot that and go to that one. What about the AstraZeneca, the Johnson & Johnson, CanSino Sputnik vaccine? They use viral vector vaccines. So, inside that viral vector is the genetic material. This one enters our cells, even enters our nucleus, but it does not combine with our DNA. It produces mRNA when it enters there, again, goes through the same principle. So none of these vaccines actually combine with our DNA. They are transient in our body and then they dissipate. Okay. Now, what about side effects? And I'll come back to that issue about long-term side effects that people are worried about this. They're worried about something's going to happen down the road to us. In terms of side effects, you must consider all of these. There are common mild side effects. There are allergic, rare, and serious side effects. There are long-term risk concerns that many of us in our mind. Then there is a timeline or coincidental related things. Something, you get a vaccine today, something happened to you tomorrow. Is it linked to the vaccine or not? And then, of course, there's a fake news related, which we must always be aware of. I want to start by saying, more than 500 million doses of vaccine are administered worldwide. It's very hard to hide any major problem right now. I mean, in today's connected world, you cannot hide this. Okay, so imagine 500 million people have received a variety of different vaccines, the ones we've been talking about. And there have been some concerns that you and I have heard about, and I'll talk about them, but it's very hard to hide a problem. Okay, bear that in mind. So the ones we're hearing is not the big picture. The ones we're hearing is a small picture, and we must bear that in mind. Let's talk about these side effects first. The common, the allergic, the rare, the serious, and the long-term risk. Okay. Now, you are all going to get some side effects. Majority, I think many of you are going to feel the pain in the arm and sore arm. Some of us are going to get dizzy or headache. Some may need to take a day off from work. Maybe some fever or nausea. The second dose is going to give you a bit more than the first dose. A lot of our doctor colleagues have got the second dose in the country have been saying, chills and fever and difficulty, moving about. There's a lot of fatigue in the second dose. So this is a common thing. But when you look at reports, very few reports. In Korea, of the doses given, 680,000 doses, 1.4% report side effect. US, 13 million doses. When I'm looking at reports, scientific reports that have been put out, only 0.05 reports. So the majority of people don't bother reporting this mild side effects. So they accept it. They accept that after a vaccine, you might get some fever or headache or some pain. Will accept it. Okay? And notice from the US one, the mass majority, 91% are non-serious. 9% are serious. And of course, the majority are female. Now, is this because females are reporting more than men? It's possible. I think women are always more diligent than men. We recognize them and value them for that. So women may report more, but looking hard at the data, women get more serious side effects than men as well. So there's a real difference that women seem to get more side effects than men. It's possible that women, because they got a different kind of immune system in some sense, they get more autoimmune diseases, their body may respond differently. Okay. Even from the South Korean data, female slightly more than male, for the overall data. We have no data from the Malaysian side for me to share with you. It's not been released at the present moment, and many of us have asked that it be released. Okay. This common side effects last 1 to 3 days, and then they're gone. What about, serious side effects? So from the US published report, of the 640 classified as serious side effects, 62 had anaphylaxis. This is the one that we're most worried about. This is the one where people get a severe allergic reaction. Notice that there were also 113 deaths. Now, this is the one that we are not sure what to do with. These are people who died after the vaccine. Are they related to the vaccine, or they just, they were very old and frail? Many of these people were long-term care facilities. That means they're in the 80s, 90s, and that's when they had the vaccination. You look at the Korean data again, they had 112 classified as serious side effects, 89 were anaphylaxis, 7 were fits, and 16 died after the vaccination. This number is going to be changing, and I saw a report yesterday, but I didn't update my slide yet. It's gone up slightly more as the vaccination number goes. All right, let's try and make some sense of these serious side effects. I like the Norwegian group. They publish every week all side effects. They believe that being transparent is the way to go forward with vaccination. I hope every country listens to this. South Korea is doing the same thing. They publish every week. Some countries publish periodically. UK also publish every week. I like these countries. So here's the Korean one, which they publish every week, which is possible on their website. So let's talk about allergies first. In our national program, they do tell you, be careful if you've got allergies, you need to take precautionary measures. And they've gone on to put out this, NPRA has gone on to put out this, our National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency has gone on to put out this poster saying, should not take Pfizer vaccine if you're allergic to its ingredient or the severe allergic to the first reaction. And if you suffer from allergens, talk to your doctor. That's the general advice they have given for severe allergic reactions or anaphylaxis, okay? I want to show you data from the US reports, the UK reports, the Norway reports, Korea reports, because they publish the data and I like the data. And here's a summary of the severe allergic reactions for you. If you trust me that I put this together, take a lot of hard work to put this together. This is the rate. I don't like numbers, I like rates, because rates tell you what's going to happen. And you can see this difference here from here. Okay, that means in the Korean data set, the allergic reactions are much higher. But of course, the Korean numbers of vaccination are small. Here, the numbers of vaccination are much larger than the millions. Okay, so can I say that if you are in a Caucasian country, it seems that if you take the Pfizer vaccine or AstraZeneca vaccine, for every 100,000 people who are vaccinated, 1 or 2 of them is going to get anaphylaxis. And what is anaphylaxis? It is a severe reaction where you have difficulty breathing, your face may swell up, your blood pressure may drop a little bit, you may need some emergency help. Nobody has died yet. Huh? Not a single person who has got this has died. And that's a great thing, because this happens usually within 30 minutes and you are still being observed there. Don't leave the vaccination station in the first 30 minutes, okay? From the Norwegian one, the Pfizer and Moderna had about the same rate, about 3 per 100,000, but the AstraZeneca one had a much higher rate, very similar to the Korean data. So the Korean data is showing about 12 to 14 per 100,000, 3 to 4 times the Caucasian rate. Is this something that's happening in East Asians? That means, those of us here, Malay, Chinese, and so are not Indians, a different ethnic group, but the rest of us in East Asia, I do not know. That means it applies to Japanese and Koreans and so on. I think we need to keep looking at this. Huh? What happens in Singapore? They only came out with data once. Since then, they have not come out any more data, and Singapore's rate was about 2.6. But the numbers are very, very small. So this number will change over time. Okay, who is likely to get this anaphylaxis thing? If you have a previous allergy to a vaccine, you are likely to get this. And I'll talk a bit more about this. And women have a much higher chance. In some of this data set, 80% of the people who are anaphylaxis are women, not men. Okay, I have no idea of Sinovac anaphylaxis rates. I cannot tell you. We should try and get this data. A lot of countries have given millions of doses of Sinovac, and we should try and ask them, like Brazil and Indonesia and China, to give us those anaphylaxis rates for Sinovac. Okay. Now, anaphylaxis, this kind of severe reaction, is not new. It happens with all vaccines, and this is a comparison for other vaccines that some of your children may have taken in the past. It does happen, but it definitely is higher with our COVID-19 vaccines, especially the ones that are using the mRNA or the vector model. Now, let's talk about allergies and what you are going to do about it. These are a different kind of allergies. Let me break them up for you. Down here is many of you. You got some running nose, temperature sensitive or dust sensitive. You got some skin eczema. You got food allergy or some insect allergy. This is very, very common. You should tell people that you are going for vaccination, that you got this. They'll keep a sharper eye on you. Just go ahead for vaccination. Your risk is slightly higher, but this one, most people say go ahead. Okay? Then there's a second group here, which I consider moderate allergies. You have very severe asthma, especially not controlled, and you have drug allergies, a lot of drug allergies, not just one drug, many drugs, but you never had anything very big. You had a drug rash or, something like that. So this second group, and this is the serious group. These are people who previously had allergic reaction to a vaccine, previously developed what is called cutaneous edema. I'm in this category, number 2. I had a swelling of my neck. I had no breathing difficulties, but very, very itchy, skin change, swelling change. And then finally, the anaphylaxis. If you had any anaphylaxis episode before to anything, you should tell your doctor. And these are the people that we should worry about the most. Okay. What have different governments advised? They've advised different things, some more lax, some more, stringent. Let me tell you what we should do. These are the group that you should worry about. The others, you just tell people that you got this allergies and they keep an eye on you. But the people who are in this group are the ones who should be worried. And as I said, a lot of the allergy now is due to polyethylene glycol or polysaccharide 80. Polyethylene glycol is the lipid molecule that covers the genetic material in the vaccine. Okay, so there are 3 possibilities for you. You may say, okay, I don't want vaccine. I'm very takut. I got severe allergy in my life. Okay, notice that we're not talking about drug allergies and this. We're talking about the people who had very, very severe allergy to something. Okay, so, but how long are you not going to vaccinate? Your life going to be restricted, isn't it? Everybody else vaccinated. Then finally they may say, cannot go to supermarket, cannot go to wedding if not vaccinated. The restrictions may grow over time. I can see governments doing that. Okay. Secondly, vaccinate in a hospital with a good physician backup. Now, this is what the government is also supporting. You should take this. Tell them, I would like to vaccinate in hospital, and do that thing. And of course, in hospital, I expect people to have adrenaline ready to support me. Third option, if you really want to, is you delay your vaccination. You will wait and watch the data, see which is the least allergic vaccine and choose that. But we can't choose our vaccines. We hope that with time, the government will actually offer the least allergic vaccine to this category of people, and at the same time, still do it in hospital with good physician backup. Having said that, what's Amma doing? Amma has got a lot of drug allergies, but he's got number 2, which is bothersome. Amma has already signed up. I have not been vaccinated because I am no longer actively practicing. I'm just retired from the civil service after 35 years. So, I don't want to cut the queue for my colleagues who need it. So I hope to be vaccinated soon, and I plan to vaccinate in hospital. I'm not going to wait for this. I plan to go ahead and vaccinate and have a good physician to back me up at that time. Okay, so I'm telling you my stance that will help you think. But the data suggests number 2. UK is very, very relaxed about it. They unless you had a vaccine anaphylaxis to a previous COVID vaccine or anaphylaxis to polyethylene glycol, they still vaccinate you in the outpatient basis. Sometimes even the pharmacy clinic. And in the US, they're vaccinating people in cars. So obviously they're a lot more relaxed than we are. All right. Okay. What about the long-term side effects of vaccine? This is in the mind of people. From all the data, from all the previous vaccines that we've ever had in the world, most, if not all, side effects appear within 6 to 8 weeks of vaccination. That's what happens. So you may say this is new technology, mRNA, but remember what I said, more than 500 million people have been vaccinated now. It's been 3 months that we started the rollout for the whole world. And don't forget the tens of thousands who had the vaccine as part of the clinical trials to produce this vaccine. They are reaching now, some of them 9 months, some of them 6 months. We would have started to see the safety signals in these people. So at the present moment, I cannot say that there are any long-term side effects to vaccines that I can see. Okay. What about this one? This one that bothers people. So after allergic one, the one that bothers everybody is the timeline related. And of course, a lot of fake news related to that. Okay. I want to say at this point that nations who report these get bad press. Nations who don't report are the ones we should worry about. So I want to praise Norway and South Korea and UK who report weekly these things to their public, and that for that reason, people, give bad press. And we come up with like this: 23 elderly people die after Pfizer shot in Norway, or South Korea probing death after COVID vaccination, or here Hong Kong leader, is very upset that people are unhappy that, after Sinovac, there are 18 deaths, so people are worried. So she's very unhappy that they are worried about this. So we get this kind of news. This is what I call coincidental, timeline related. And let me explain that to you and how we make sense of it. We've got our own. We had a fireman death and a nurse death related after vaccine, and the Ministry of Health came out very strongly to say after the autopsy, it's not related to COVID-19 vaccine. I wrote this with a couple of colleagues. This was in February. I wrote it because we anticipate this kind of news coming out. You can see my colleagues are all good people, and we expect deaths post-COVID vaccination. Not the best title, but we know that some people are going to die because that is happening. And what do I mean by that? Once you're past 65, you are going to die. Some of us are going to die. We'll die of heart attack. We'll die of a stroke. We might die of cancer. We might die of a lung disease. And this, I'm going a little bit faster, but 75 deaths per 100,000 people per week in Malaysia for people past 65. So you got 100,000 past 65-year-old people that 675 of them are not going to be here next week. So you got a church which is 100,000 people, all 65-year-olds. Every week 75 of them are going to go, and this is without vaccines. Remember that, huh? Without the vaccine. This is what we call expected, spontaneous, or some people call baseline mortality. So every week, 75, 75, 75. Of course, there may be some reduction. We don't die so much on the road, but I noticed that road deaths have gone up again. We may die less from other respiratory infections because we wear a mask, but it's not going to go down very much because it's heart attacks and strokes, very common there. Okay. So post-COVID vaccine, we expect the same deaths. They're not going to go away. These deaths are still going to happen in the group above 65. And of course, in some people under 65 as well are going to die from natural causes. Maybe that's the best word. Huh? Don't like the word natural. And this number is not 65. It's going to be sometimes 85, sometimes 60 is going to be up. We should only be alarmed if this rate goes up. The absolute rate per 100,000 goes up. And we should be monitoring this rate. So here's to summarize it to you in a very, very simple way. I thought this diagram say, here's an 82-year-old person who's hypertension. He's got high blood pressure. He has a stroke. 5 days later, after being in hospital, he dies. We expect this. It happens sometimes. The stroke is bad enough. Now, take the same person. He's well at this point. Huh? He happened to go for COVID vaccination. 2 days later, he had the stroke that was going to happen to him, and then he died. Now we will say the COVID vaccination caused a stroke and the death. But actually, it would have happened to him anyway. So how do we differentiate this? Again, it requires the health authorities to be very transparent. We don't want to amplify this on social media because this is what we're seeing right now. We're seeing this in Hong Kong. We're seeing this in South Korea. We're seeing this in many countries. I noticed the industrialized countries is settling down because they're very sensible communities. They discuss the data in their media. We just, tell people, this is fake news, don't share. But I think we should discuss this in a sensible way that this is possible. And we must share detailed information so people have confidence in us. So here's, for example, from the Norwegian one, they publish exactly. And then they tell you how old these fellas are. Okay. So for example, all these deaths, some from Pfizer, you can see they're using Pfizer a lot, some from AstraZeneca, some from Moderna, all have deaths. Most of them are in elderly nursing home. But notice that 6 are under 50 years of old, and those are the ones I will concentrate on, especially why did they die. 3 of them died from blood clots, that people were worried about. Notice that Hong Kong, from after Sinovac, after about close to 300 doses, 9 deaths. After Pfizer, 150,000, 1 death. So all these deaths, I think it's incumbent on our health authorities all over the world, publish the data, give us this data, and at the same time, evaluate each of these deaths for us. I like this guy from France who said, there's a significant amount of spontaneous mortality in older people. It's difficult to attribute these deaths to people who are vaccinated. So don't necessarily spread these rumors. Ask for clarification. Okay. At the same time, in many countries like US, they're comparing every side effect that people have with what's happening in the normal community. Because some people complain, I got this, maybe it's due to the vaccine, but actually sometimes these things happen to you naturally and they compare that. I'm not going to go through that for you. Okay. Now, this is one thing that has recently emerged with the AstraZeneca vaccine. I'm very sad for the AstraZeneca vaccine. It's getting such a bad press. It's a good vaccine. Okay. And this is coming up from the European medicine agencies after they looked at all the supposedly side effects from AstraZeneca, especially the deaths related to thrombosis. That means a clot, especially a clot in the brain. And this is their summary statement. The vaccine benefit outweighs the risk of side effect. Okay. you must recognize that COVID-19 can cause clotting and can clot in your brain, and COVID-19 can be quite fatal, okay? Vaccines may be associated with very rare cause of blood clots. I'm very proud of them that they were brave enough to say that this may be possible. It's quite rare, okay? And, you know, it's very, very small numbers. In 20 million, these are the numbers they're talking about. If these 20 million people had COVID, you can imagine the mortality is huge. The higher rates actually were not seen in older people, they're actually seen in younger people with below 50. Okay, and they call this now the vaccine-induced traumatic immune thrombocytopenia, and they're working on how to recognize this fast and treat these people. So there is a small risk that the vaccine is. I told you I'll be honest, and this is the current statement from the European medicine agencies. Some other health authorities have said there's absolutely no risk, but I think we need to keep watching this safety signal for thrombosis, okay, which I say is not peculiar to AstraZeneca as well. All right. So if you are in Malaysia, if you are getting the vaccine, please report side effects. You may not want to report the minor ones, plus please report the major ones. There are 3 ways you can report to the health facility that gave you the vaccine. You can use the MySejahtera app, or you can go to our national regulatory authority, pharmacy regulatory authority, and use their website there to report. They have a special committee set up to look at all adverse events following immunization. And we need to do this because this is the only way to recognize if the vaccine is causing problems. All right. Notice that the government has also come out with this reassurance for people that they will compensate you if the vaccine causes severe side effects. Okay. Now I want to put that in some perspective for us. Okay. Here's the 100,000 Malaysian population, 100,000 people per year. This is per year, not per week. This is the number of people who would die who are aged more than 65 every year. This is the number of people who would die in the 50 to 64 bracket if they had COVID. I want you to compare these figures and think about them. Huh? I use a lower figure. I didn't want to use a 75 because you say, Amma, you're always talking about old fellas. Let's talk about a slightly younger fellas who are my upper age bracket, and some of the people in this audience are in that category. This is a number of people who will die if you get infected with COVID. This is a number of people who are going to get long COVID. If 100,000 people get COVID, you know, 10,000 of them are going to get long COVID. Your life is going to be mucked up for months. We don't know whether it's going to persist longer than that. If 100,000 people drive a car or motorbike, 25 of you are going to die this year. Compare that risk. And here's the anaphylaxis risk, if you're worried about anaphylaxis. Okay? It's 2 to 14. I didn't even put down the risk due to this one, this one. Because it's so tiny right now, it's not even possible to put it down yet. It's too tiny to put down for the 100,000 yet. It's still something per million right now. What's happening? And don't forget, we're always having risk. Eat too much rice or so, we're going to get fat and get diseases. So here's another way to look at it in case that data was too difficult for you. Here's the severe side effects from the vaccine right now. That dot is too big, by the way. I need to make the dot smaller, but I couldn't. That's the smallest I can make a dot on the PowerPoint. Here's a death related to COVID vaccine. Here's long COVID. And that gives you the perspective. And I hope this is one of my most compelling slides for you to vaccinate. But let me enlarge that. Don't forget that some people are dying because we are locked down. The increased rate of suicides, and some people haven't had their health checked. They're scared to go to hospital. Some people may not get the same health care they used before, and the death rate has gone up. This is we call collateral deaths due to the lockdown and the pandemic. But don't forget this huge thing. This is too small. I should double the size of this and fill the whole box, all of us. This is the big picture, the way the pandemic has warped our lives, our jobs, our psyche, our anxiety. You know, every single one of us is infected, and I worry what our children will look like long term. So think about this way. Back to you, Ming. Sorry for it's so long, but I thought that was a very important area to cover.
Thank you, Amma. I think that is very helpful, especially the big picture. And by what you have shared, you have already answered some of the questions that people are already putting up on the chat, especially on the side effect and so on and so forth. Well, there's another 2 more related issues on the vaccine. That is the way the vaccine is being administered. We understand that there are some vaccines that use a single dose and some are double dose vaccine. So the question is, what are the differences? Is the double dose vaccine more effective than single dose? And what happens if one only take a single dose, 1 dose of vaccine, and fail to take second dose, especially those who have suffer severe allergy? And does it render the entire vaccination void or ineffective? And another thing is related is that are the current vaccine in the market able to fight the mutation of the virus, the new strain of virus is coming up? If not, does it render the whole vaccination exercise useless? And even if the manufacturers improve on the vaccine to fight the new strain of virus, is it safe for a person who has been recently vaccinated to take on a new vaccine so soon?
Thank you, Meng, and all very important and valuable questions. And I'm going to be briefer this time as I answer these. Now, here are some of the questions you asked me. Okay, single dose versus 2-dose. Now, vaccines are designed differently by the manufacturer, and we have to trust their research for this. So, some vaccines like Johnson and Johnson, CanSino are single dose, whereas others are designed to be 2 doses. So, you got to follow the dosing schedule of the vaccine manufacturer. What happens if you take only 1 dose and you require 2 doses? You will develop some immunity, but we don't know how long immunity will last. We don't know how good it's going to be. There are some studies looking at that. And for that reason, some countries have delayed the 2nd dose because the 1st dose is good. I would say do not delay your 2nd dose. Get fully vaccinated if you need 2 doses. So if you need 2 doses, that is the recommended schedule. You need to get that protection to prevent you from getting into hospital, from getting severe COVID. And that's the place you want to look at, getting severe COVID. Now, we are Asians, we think, more medicine better than less medicine. Not always true, huh? Okay, sometimes 1 dose will work. And that's just a different style of vaccine, the way they engineered it. It's just the ingenuity of man that, and blessed by God there. What happens if you miss a 2nd dose? Our Deputy Health Minister said, hey, come back to us within 40 days, we'll give you a dose. I would say past 40 days or so, come back, give you a dose. There's data from the Sinovac one, for example, that if you delay the 2nd dose past, I think about a month, 28 days, it gives a better immune response than if you give it within 14 weeks. But people are still not sure which schedule. Right now, the schedule is still 2 weeks, 14 days. So still come back. If you miss 2nd dose, come back and get your dose. Make yourself fully immune. Now, some people say, what about mixing and matching vaccines also? You didn't ask the question, but I'll answer it. Can we get one, Sinovac and another one, Pfizer? People are actually doing those trials right now. Cannot answer this question for you. But at some point, maybe we have the answer for that. What about the mutations? Now, viruses mutate. All viruses mutate. The influenza virus mutates so much so that the vaccine is going to be changed every year. The virus mutates because sometimes it gives an advantage. It helps us to escape our immune system and can infect us. So currently, the 3 mutations that people are worried about is the UK, the South African, and the Brazilian mutations. And here's the latest data. I know this is a bit small. You may not see it very well. It looks at all the different vaccines and whatever available data that is for. Right now, for Sinovac, we don't have data. We do not know whether it's effective against the vaccine. AstraZeneca, we know it doesn't work well for the South African. Sputnik, we have no data. Pfizer, the effectiveness is decreased for all the different, mutations, but there is some benefit as well in working with them. So what would I say? I think it's still valuable to use the vaccine right now. It's not we shouldn't stop our vaccination program because we have very few of this circulating in our community. We have some, but very, very few of them circulating in our community. So it's time now to vaccinate. The more you vaccinate, the less you allow mutations to happen because you don't like COVID to spread. So you must recognize that's an important reason. Okay. Do we need new vaccines? I suspect so. I suspect we'll need to re-engineer vaccines, and they become very easy to re-engineer if it's mRNA. Those vaccines are very easy to just change the messenger RNA you need and produce a new one. Is it safe to take more vaccines? These are adults talking. If you ask children, they receive 10 vaccines in the first 12 months. So that's a lot of vaccines in 12 months. And I'm a pediatrician. I've seen children safely get that. So I think another dose is not going to make very much difference in your life. So, but I believe that we are coming to the place if these mutations spread. I want to say something that I learned recently. The mutations don't just spread. They can develop in your own country. That people believe that many of the similar mutations may also develop in other countries. So that is the reason we must control COVID by all measures, COVID-19, and use a vaccination program so that we can stop any mutation developing in our country that's a nasty mutation. Many other mutations are there. hundreds of mutations, but they don't seem to be of concern to us. These few mutations spread more easily, and some of them are more severe in giving more severe COVID-19 to us. Now, new vaccines are always in development. You can go to this interactive site which tells you what their status is like. Once they're past phase 3, then you know that they are out there. Okay, and some companies are trying to develop oral vaccines. You can see even the CanSino people and the Indian group are trying to develop nasal vaccines, which may be actually more effective because that's where the virus comes in. So this is all very, very preliminary work, but we hope that, again, this may rapidly be escalated for us. Back to you.
All right, thank you. Now we will move on to the next type of a question that has to do with the vaccination program by the government. It's good that our government is providing free vaccination to all citizens as well as foreign workers as well. Can you tell us more about the overall plan and explain the concept of herd immunity and why achieving the herd immunity is important? But what will happen if we still cannot achieve herd immunity after giving out the vaccine to all who have registered? And the government currently has acknowledged that the registration for the vaccination is rather low. Why is it so? Could it be due to misinformation, some conflicting news or rumors about the vaccine? And if so, how can we, discern the fake news from the truth?
Thanks, Yin Ming. I think these are practical issues that we need to deal with. I want to say, first of all, that I don't represent the government here. I'm just, sharing what's happening in the vaccination program. And here's our daily vaccination numbers until 25th March. And you can see we're doing about, maybe between about 15,000 to about 30,000 a day right now. And largely, of course, we're doing our frontliners, especially the health staff right now. So we have vaccinated slightly past 500,000 as of yesterday data, and about 30% of the target population, that means the adult population that we want to vaccinate, about 7 million, have signed up to say, hey, I want the vaccination. So that's our current status right now. This is not exciting, both of these. Let me take that. Let me take this one first here. This whole issue of how fast we're vaccinating. This is how fast we're vaccinating right now to the end of the year. So if we carry on at this rate, at the end of the year, we can vaccinate 20% of our population with 1 dose. But 1 dose is not enough. We know we need 2 doses. So that means we can vaccinate 10% of our population, or 3 million people, with 2 doses. That's nothing in 1 year. I suspect the reason for this is that we haven't received enough vaccine. Supply is a problem in the whole world. And we also have to fight for supply, which is why we went and quickly bought those 5 vaccines in advance. Even before the study data came out, people bought vaccines already. Okay, so we definitely have to push this graph up. Okay, having said that, here's comparing Australia and South Korea, and not doing so well. Of course, Australia is not so concerned because they don't have a huge outbreak. South Korea is struggling a little bit with fake news, but we are not doing that badly. But all these countries have to ramp up, like the UK has done and Israel has done. They've done phenomenally well. Israel has vaccinated all their old people, 80% of them, with 2 doses, and UK has given at least 50% of their adults 1 dose, which is a phenomenal performance in a very short time. Okay, so we must recognize that some of our vaccines have logistic problems, and production and delivery the world is high. I like this director of WHO, one of the directors of WHO, Kate O'Brien, who said, getting an effective vaccine is like building a base camp in Mount Everest. If any of you have gone on holiday to the base camp in Mount Everest, you know how hard it is to get there. But she says that climbing to the peak is really about delivering the vaccines, and this cannot be emphasized. So trying to give this to a population at 1 go is something that no country has done before. Every country is new to this. So I wouldn't blame us if we are still trying to get this together. All right. So what about herd immunity then? That's our performance. What about herd immunity? This diagram on the left shows you what it looks like with low and high vaccinations on the right. The open circle is the one not vaccinated. The orange red one is the infected, and the dark blue black ones are the vaccinated. So if not enough people are vaccinated, then you can spread your infection to those who are not vaccinated. But once not immune, once you have enough people vaccinated, then those who are infected cannot spread. They are sort of cocooned, we limit their spread. Of course, they might spread here and there, but it's very spread. So herd immunity is extremely important to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And what's that going to do? It's going to prevent deaths. It's going to prevent long COVID. It's going to prevent new mutations from happening. And of course, it's going to allow us to open back our lives, our economies, and help the poor get back on their feet. So can we achieve herd immunity? At the present moment, no, we cannot. This is a schematic diagram of our population, 32 million people. Okay? This is the group we want to vaccinate seriously. The 7% who are above 65, the ones we are most concerned about. There are 30% of children. Right now, the vaccines are not licensed for children, so we can't vaccinate them. Okay, that's 10% non-citizens. Is underestimation, of course, is bigger than this. And these are the people who are very frightened to approach authorities because scared to get deported, whatever. We need to protect them. Otherwise, they're not going to vaccinate. And they also are our workforce, and we need to vaccinate them. Some people are breastfeeding or pregnant, and the breastfeeding woman can get vaccinated, but the pregnant may not. And that's a contraindicated. Some people who are in hospital right now, who are ill, who are going through chemotherapy, who can't get vaccinated. And then going to be some people who don't want the vaccine. So you can look at, the population that we vaccinate, maybe about, 60, 70%. If you cannot vaccinate more than 70% of your population, you cannot prevent this transmission. You cannot, work against mutants. So I think the mutations. So I think that we need to work very hard. Many people recognize this big block is the focus that we need to work on. While we're trying to work on people who are not keen. I've been very conservative. I only put 10%. It's probably larger. We need to work on this. Okay. Remember that children, even after we are vaccinated, our whole population are still no herd immunity. When they go to school, 99% of them are children and they have no herd immunity. You can see recently 2,000 infected in classrooms just in the first 3 months of our year. So children are going to be exposed, and some children do get ill with COVID-19. So there are trials appearing now, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Sinovac, beginning to show there's immunity, like Sinovac showing immunity in young children, and maybe even one dose may be enough for young children. So very soon, we're going to come back to these children. You're going to be hearing about more of this in the next 3 to 6 months. And even in some countries, they're vaccinating now down to 16 because they feel the data is safe for that. Okay. Now, why are people not registering? I think some are not aware. I talk to lots of people when I go out. I go to tapao food. I haven't eaten in a restaurant or a shop for more than a year. I tapao lunch, and I talk to people. Some people are waiting. I talk to some migrant workers. They said, don't know, waiting for my boss to register me. And, some people haven't registered because they're not aware. Some, like in Sabah, connectivity is very poor. We need to help them. And here's where I hope the internet, DG and Maxis and Celcom and all this will help get this done. And the majority, maybe the 80% of those who are not registered, they are hesitant. They don't know. There's so much disinformation. They're concerned with side effects. They're concerned especially with deaths. They're concerned with mRNA long-term issues. And so they wait to see. This is the Malaysian method, isn't it? We wait to see somebody. Somebody go to the coffee shop. A lot of people go there to eat. Oh, there must be a good place to eat. We go to eat also. It's like that, isn't it? Our mentality, mine is also not too different. So I think the majority are wait and see. They're not anti-vaccination. They just want to see that it's safe to use. Some are worried to sign up and then change their mind. They've been in trouble, and a few are concerned of the ethics of the vaccine production. A minority are anti-vax. Again, I must say, trust deficit is our big problem, and we need transparency. I feel it's a second trust deficit. That's our trust deficit in God. And we need to trust God in this pandemic and listen to God. What is God saying? Not just what Amar is saying, not what just man is saying, but what God is saying as well. Okay. Here's the Council of Churches coming out with a firm statement saying that, call on all Christians to participate voluntarily. It's our expression of our Christian moral responsibility. And maybe it's time for other church groups, national groups, to consider whether we want to come up with advisory for our congregations to say, hey, we think it's a good idea. We've signed up. We'd like you to consider signing up as a gesture of love to other people. Okay. I saw this press statement, which you saw as well, the government thinking of setting a deadline. This is not a good idea. I hope they never do this. We need to vaccinate our population. Some people will take time to come on board. Let's wait for them while we encourage them. What about passports? I think this is going to be the carrot and stick, as I talked about earlier. This is going to spur some of us to vaccinate because once you got a COVID-19 passport, can do more things. So passports, vaccine passports are not going to work all over the world, because some people may produce a fake passport. There are different virus variants and different vaccines being used. But I think within the country, we can use this wisely. But as I said, this may be the carrot and stick the government is going to use. Now, I want to talk to you, to those of you who are struggling, who still think, you're worried, you're reading a lot of, WhatsApp or Facebook things. Make it a habit to read good sites. Read sites like these: Coronavirus Tracker for vaccines, WHO, Center for Disease Control US, Up to Date Medicine, which has made their site available as a medical site, Medscape. There are many that we read which are good ones. These are facts versus opinion. Okay, careful with opinions. Take responsibility when you see something which is alarming. Check it out. This is a very good site, Media Bias Fact Check. And sometimes people send me really alarming stuff. I go, in fact, and check that. That is a notorious site for fake news and especially for anti-vaccine. So I know to take this site with a pinch of salt. I still listen because people ask me to listen, And if you don't know how to evaluate, maybe ask, one of your church doctors or friends, the doctor, to go and don't ask the same fellow all the time because they get fatigued. I get so many asks, okay? But don't forward without checking. And look for red flags. What are red flags? Excessive claims, not backed by data. They appeal to emotions. They're very pushy. You must share this before it's deleted kind of fellas. I worry about that. I keep an open mind. I believe in divergent views. It grows my discernment. Okay. And as I said, listen to God's voice. Okay. Yeah. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. And there are further questions related to the vaccination program. And let me just continue on with these questions that are all related. Now, why don't the government stick to one type of vaccine instead of having so many different types? And we also understand the mRNA vaccine require extremely cold temperature. And what happened is that chain is broken, will it render the vaccine useless, right? And also we would like to know, after achieving the herd immunity, if we do we still have to follow all the SOP of wearing masks, etc.? If so, why is that so?
Can you leave the slide on, Yin Ming, and let me answer when this slide is on? Yeah, I'm very glad the government didn't stick to one vaccine. We know that it's very hard to get vaccines. So a lot of governments actually put in money even before the vaccines were out to say, hey, we are going to buy a vaccine. And that's a risk taking, but it means that you can see right now, we have got vaccines in our country to use. Some countries are still struggling to get their vaccines. So I think also, secondly, if you use different vaccines, then if you find that one vaccine is having problems, you can still switch over to another vaccine. The third reason is that different vaccines have different cold chain. So it's easier to use some vaccines in urban areas and use some vaccines in rural areas. So that makes sense as well. Okay. Again, finally, there may be an allergy problem that we talked about, and that may be beneficial to some of us that the government has bought a variety of vaccines. It may benefit those of us with severe allergic risk. What about this cold chain? Now, I'm a pediatrician. I'm also a researcher. I work with Ministry of Health quite a bit in the past, and I studied cold chain quite a bit. I did 2 very large studies. Can I tell you the Ministry of Health is very fussy with their cold chain? The nurses are like black and white. You can trust them. So the cold chain within the Ministry of Health system is very, very, fussy. They monitor temperature all the time. They've got thermometers there. They record every day. So whenever a batch goes out of their temperature control, they will throw the whole batch away. That's our policy. Okay, so I agree with you. Once it's compromised, it's going to go. But remember that even these cold vaccines, they can last for 30 days at 2 to 8 degrees. That's your fridge temperature. So even if the temperature drops for a short while, these vaccines can still be used. But after that, you should bin these vaccines. They're not going to work, the cold chain. Now, after immunity, do we still have to wear masks? Could you stop slide setting? I want to share one slide for that one, Yin Ming. Yeah. Okay. So, vaccination doesn't mean you can suddenly go back to complete different lifestyle. It doesn't mean you can stop wearing your SOPs. Why is that? Because although the majority of us, a minority of you will not respond to the vaccine. That's true for any vaccine. It's not 100% response. Okay. Some who develop immunity can still become infected. We recognize that. And don't forget, we talked about these variants and mutants appearing. And so for that reason, we don't want to expose ourselves until the world is settled or your country is settled. And some people's immunity may wane sometimes. So I think these are some of the reasons why we will still continue to wear masks. I will still continue to wear my mask and my face shield for a while, but I probably become a bit more relaxed with my cycling and a few other things, I think. Okay. Let me just skip that. World of vaccine. I want to answer this question, which I didn't answer earlier. Post-COVID vaccine, we're getting better and better data. I was very hesitant to show this earlier, but here's from Spain. These are healthcare professionals. This is their first dose. This is their second dose. And they're some of the best people to look at because they're high risk exposure. And you can see after their second dose, almost nobody got COVID-19. So it looks like, what I said earlier may not be entirely true, that the vaccine actually may protect us against the virus efficiently. And we may actually, if enough of the community is vaccinated, move away from our SOPs later. Okay, stop there. Yep.
Thank you, Anna. I think by and large, you have answered most of the question we have asked related to the vaccine, to the program, to the side effect and allergies. And I know time is catching up, and we do have quite a number of questions.
Why don't we take them, shall we? Huh? Yes.
Yeah, but then we also have some that are on the chat, but let me tell those of you who have put on the chat that unfortunately, we may not be able to answer all the questions. By and large, quite a number of the questions have been answered by Amar, right, here and there. And well, I believe that the general principle can apply to many of the questions. But there are some specific questions I would like to ask that this question have been given earlier on. And if we have time, we will look into other questions. The first question I would like to ask is on the very elderly. Is it advisable to vaccinate the very elderly, like 80 and above, 90 and above, especially they are frail, the high-risk group, right, and those with certain medical condition? Will the side effects pose more danger than them? And what about vaccinating pregnant women and children? What is your advice?
Yeah, I've got some slides on this, but let's not use the slides for time. I believe that, let's take them differently. Breastfeeding, Ministry of Health has said, please go ahead. For pregnant, Ministry of Health originally said no, but then they said, now ask your doctor. The obstetric ONG organization in Malaysia has also come up with a firm statement as well, saying that if you are in a high-risk place, that means you're likely to get COVID and you're pregnant, go ahead and get the vaccine. Most people recommend that, if you're concerned, wait till your second or third trimester. That means not the first 12 weeks of your pregnancy. If you are low risk and you can protect yourself, you can wait till your pregnancy is over. So there's some general advice for people who are pregnant. People who have very severe illnesses, diabetes, hypertension, who are often chronically ill, these are the people you will need the vaccine, because you're the people who are going to actually get a very severe COVID or die from the vaccine. But the first one, Yin Ming, I've grappled with that and agonized over it, talked with my wife. I don't know how to answer that one. Let's say I have a grandfather or father who is 85 years old. He's lying in bed all the time. He is not mentally very sound. He's demented. We have to feed him. We have to wear pampers for him. He's like that. He's very, very severely not well at all the time. We're waiting for him to die any day. It might happen. Should we give the vaccine to this person? I do not know. If they get COVID, of course, they're going to die very quickly. But the vaccine going to cause some fever and some side effects. Will that tip over this person? I don't know the answer to that. I think it will have to be individual thing. Looking at all the data from the long care facilities in many industrialized countries, some of these people have, maybe the side effects of the vaccine, the common ones that you and I can handle because we're younger, weren't handled so well by these people, and then they develop another infection. Maybe they develop from the chills, a pneumonia, not from the vaccine itself. So I would be a little bit cautious with that group. But this doesn't apply to a healthy 80-year-old person, or it doesn't apply to a 75-year-old person who's got diabetes, hypertension, all that, who's walking around. You get the vaccine, it's important to you.
Okay, thank you. This is a more personal question. Can a kidney transplant recipient, surgery done less than a year ago, and still on immunosuppressive medication, take the vaccine?
I think you need to consult your personal doctor for this. You need to also actually, if the doctor doesn't know, check with the national vaccine group. The problem will be that you may not respond so well. And some immune suppressives are things that we don't want you to get a vaccine yet. These are the people that we are reluctant to vaccinate. Some of the strong immunosuppressives are very similar to ones we use, anti-cancer agents. I've seen studies where people who were immunosuppressors were given, immunosuppressed people like this kidney patient were given the vaccine, and only about 30% of them responded to the vaccine. So there are two issues. One, you may not respond. Two, if you've got strong immunosuppressants, people may not be so happy to give you the vaccination.
What about a person who signed up for vaccination, but when they are notified they change their mind, will they be penalized? And what about those who were given a date, but the date was not suitable? Are they able to change, the date for vaccination?
I think the change in date in vaccination is possible. I think that's a reality, and it's possible. For doctors, sometimes we have no choice. They give you a very short deadline because they try to fill in the gaps, and get everybody done. But for the public, I think people are going to have a lot more backup individuals who can fill your slot, and you got to call up very quickly and say, I can't, and can you please reschedule for me? Usually, they're probably trying to give you a couple of days. I would say try and keep your appointment as far as possible. For those who change their mind, I think change your mind early. Will you be penalized? I don't know. I heard one comment from someone in the Ministry of Health said, yeah, but I think I've heard nothing else. I don't think they're going to do this because we want everybody to be vaccinated. I don't think the stick is going to be used as much as a carrot.
Okay. Besides registration, how can a person prepare themselves for the vaccination? Is there anything they need to do? And then after the vaccination, is there anything they can do to cope with the possible side effect?
Nobody's very sure about this. I've read quite a bit from people who are infectious disease specialists or people who are working in the area. The suggestion is that, don't take medication unnecessarily before your vaccination. Where some people think, okay, I'm going to get the vaccination, I better take some Panadol or some aspirin right now. Don't do that. That's going to blunt the vaccination, and you're going to blunt your side effects, more important. So people may not see your side effects so clearly. Take it after the vaccination is over. When you feel some pain and some fever, you can take it there. There is some suggestion that, if you exercise rigorously the last 2 hours before or after vaccination, it may not be a good idea. I think you move the arm where you're vaccinated, and people are a little bit concerned. There's no good hard data for this. I'm just suggesting opinions here as well. There's another opinion that a hot shower makes you more prone to getting allergic reactions. Again, it's an opinion, and you should take it for that purpose. I think the good things are, get good rest before you come for your vaccination. I think that's a good idea. Get good rest. Come together with other people who are getting vaccinated, so you got some company. I hope they vaccinate family members together so that people can go together for vaccination. I think that gives you more security and courage.
Okay, thank you. So I know just now you did mention about the possibility of some vaccine. Do we need that before we go to travel, even travel abroad? So far, is there any country that have opened up to this travel bubble for people who have vaccinated?
I think still in discussion stage. Countries with very, very low rates like Australia and New Zealand are talking to each other about doing this, but each person may have a different, vaccine kind of passport, and that's going to make life difficult. We need to have a universal one that everybody can verify. Then it works. So there are lots of problems with the vaccine passport, but people are beginning to experiment. China came out with a statement saying you cannot come to our country unless you take our vaccine. So I think that one is a little bit unrealistic in the present climate where supply is a problem. Yeah.
Okay. Just now you did mention about vitamin D. So there is a question from the audience, is that what is considered a conservative dose of vitamin D?
Nobody has come up with a fixed dose. So I'm reluctant to come online here and tell you my dose. I think go and read authoritative sources and see what they suggest. Now remember this vitamin D, it's just a suggestion from all the data. Currently, people are studying whether it's useful for very ill people in hospital. But, even somebody like Fauci, the very famous doctor in the US, he's also supplementing with vitamin D. We look at the data and we think that there's something here. We also use a dose that doesn't harm. Don't take a high dose that may be harming you. And so we use it like a supplement, but don't rely on it to say, okay, I'm taking vitamin D and now I'm COVID safe. I think don't look at it that way. Look at it as something that may bring some benefit. Very underline that may very strongly. Okay.
Okay. If we are infected even when vaccinated, can we still infect others?
Nobody's sure about this. We will need more data right now. It could mean that you had vaccination, you still got infected, but your viral load, the amount of virus that can be produced in your body is very small. And for that reason, you can't spread it to someone else. So even though you got infected. So these are all assumptions right now. We will have the answer in the next 3 months, I am certain, from all the enormous number of people who are working very hard, getting us the good data. So I suspect no, but that's just a suspicion, personal opinion, not hard fact.
Okay. Another question is it encouraged to vaccinate if there is a chronic heart and stroke history before?
Yes, you are the one who is more likely to get severe COVID. That's one reason I'm vaccinating. I've got a long-standing cardiac problem from childhood, and I've had many procedures done. So I want to protect myself against COVID. Yeah, there's some risk taking the vaccine. They're small. I look at the big thing. If I get COVID, I think I'm going to use a colloquial word, bungkus. I'm probably going to get on a ventilator and I may not make it. So I believe these are the people who should protect themselves with the vaccination. This is what the data says, yes.
Okay, thank you. So what about those who have contracted COVID-19 virus earlier? Is it necessary for them to be vaccinated?
I believe that all the data, all the opinions right now from medical bodies all say yes. How many doses? Nobody's very sure. Right now they say complete the vaccination. But the studies show that one dose of the vaccine boosts your antibodies really high. That means it changes your immunity. The COVID virus didn't give you a very strong immunity, but once you get the vaccine, you get a very strong immunity that boosts you. And so most countries are doing this. And I think this is the current recommendation all over the world, yes.
I see. One question is related to churches. Our churches are usually enclosed without much ventilation. So how useful are air sterilizers? Should we use them or should we just ventilate, or how should we ventilate the church?
Yeah, I've done a couple of sessions for churches talking about, how we can change our meeting styles. And I think we're all very keen to get together, but I believe the house church is the church of the future, not just the church of COVID-19 period. And so smaller numbers meeting in a well-ventilated place is the way forward. But if you want 500 or 1,000 people to meet or 2,000 people to meet in a mega church, which is air conditioned, you're in trouble, because most air conditioned systems recirculate 70% of the air back into the system. And those filters are not going to stop COVID-19 unless you put in some high quality HEPA filters. What work is being done right now, people are looking at putting UVC, ultraviolet C, into your aircon and kill the virus. So when the air is recirculated, it's killed there. Okay, but UVC has also got its own side effects. So you got to read hard the data, what's happening there. If you want to have an indoor meeting, which is large, then you need to ventilate, which means windows are open, fans are situated at the window to push air out and suck air in. Your aircon is set to sucking air in. Now, none of our buildings are set up like that. And perhaps we need to rethink about not COVID-19, but the next one. And maybe anytime we build a building, we should read good guidelines from people who talk about ventilation and how to build better ventilation systems indoor. Otherwise, you're going to be masked indoor, but that mask is not going to be very, very effective in an closed indoor setting with another 1,000 people, especially if they are singing or moving around. So I would suggest keep the small group meetings as far as possible.
Okay, thank you. Some more personal question is like that. One person asked, is it safe for those who have autoimmune disease to be vaccinated? And another person asked, what about someone who has schizophrenia? Is it safe for them to be vaccinated?
The schizophrenia is easy to answer. Yes, I think go ahead. There's nothing wrong with that person's body. There's a problem with his psyche, his spirit, and his mind. So yeah, go ahead and vaccinate it. Of course, some schizophrenics, I've worked in a psychiatric hospital for a year, so I know some may not allow you to vaccinate them. They become violent. So it depends on whether they are compliant to allowing you to inject them or not. Now, the autoimmune one is tougher. It's a difficult one. As long as the medication you're on is not a medication that suppresses your immunity. I believe you should go ahead, and most people will recommend that you get vaccinated. If you're on immune suppressive drugs, then I think you should discuss with the doctor or discuss with the COVID-19 team, yes, health team, Ministry of Health. Yes.
Okay. There's this person who asked that he or she cannot take NSAID, NSAID, the left eye swell. So is a Pfizer vaccine suitable for the person?
Yeah, I believe that will come under moderate allergic reactions, drug allergies. In the UK guidelines, they would say, go ahead and vaccinate. In the Malaysian guidelines, they say, go and talk to your doctor. But your doctor also say, I still got to go and read, okay? So I would suggest, go ahead and get vaccinated. If you're concerned, go and read more authoritative guidelines. Most of the guidelines say, go ahead and vaccinate. But when you go and vaccinate, you've got to tell people that you have this allergy. They will watch you more closely. If you got more than one drug allergy, I would think consider whether we should vaccinate you in hospital, not in the health clinic, for safety purposes.
All right. Is there any link that you can share with us to view adverse events for those vaccinated?
I think that the ones that I shared with you earlier, I suggest that you take a screenshot and go and find them. Let me reshare right now. Let me try and, okay, I'm sharing a different screen to try and go quickly to it. If I can find it. Yeah, here it is. This screen that I shared. Can you see it, Yin-Ming? Okay.
Yes.
So I think the screenshot. The best is the Norwegian, the Korean, but the UK one is excellent as well. These are the ones who publish weekly report. The US one publish periodically. Okay. So I would go to these sites. I go to sites all the time and look at their side effects. But I would like to encourage that, I hope Singapore publishes, I hope Malaysia publishes for our community to see them. I'm going to stop sharing. Hope you have taken a screenshot. Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to read through the many questions as some are related that you have already answered. Right? And looking at the time, we are at 4:35.
I'm happy to handle some more questions if you all are happy to continue. Yes.
All right. So there is another one related to a person that's suffering from rheumatic arthritis. This is an immune disorder. So can the vaccine aggravate the condition?
A slightly different answer from the one earlier. Again, if you're rheumatoid arthritis, getting the vaccine depends on the drugs that you're on. If you're on strong immunosuppressive, you should ask your doctor or the COVID team. But if you don't have that, can it make it worse? I don't know the answer to this. Again, as I suggested, more than 500 million have been vaccinated. A lot of the trial subjects who've been vaccinated 6-9 months are now, 6-9 months down the road. If we started to see immune conditions, that means if the vaccine is causing an autoimmune problem, we should start seeing those kind of signals right now. As I said, most of them appear within a couple of weeks. I know that for the Pfizer vaccine in the US, they are seeing an increase of ITP. That means your platelets drop. Okay, but it's very small numbers. But I think, again, it's a safety signal that needs to be monitored. And people are still trying to make sense of it, like the thrombosis that we saw in Europe. So I would say it doesn't appear to be from all the data that I've seen. But I believe always being honest, and I cannot give you 100% guarantee. Right now, no.
Okay. So does the vaccine cause ADE, antibody-dependent enhancement?
Say that again, AD?
ADE, antibody-dependent enhancement.
What is ADE, antibody enhancement? I'm old and demented, so maybe I don't know what that means. Im, do you know what that means? Sorry, I'm... enhancing the disease. Okay, fine. Thank you very much. I understand the question right now. My wife has clarified for me. Sorry, I'm slow there. So this is looking at whether COVID vaccine will make the next COVID infection worse for you. That means there's some concern with certain diseases when you give a vaccine. Dengue is one of them, for example. It's not 100% proven, but they feel that if you get the dengue vaccine, that may prime you or prepare you that when you get the real dengue, that dengue may be worse. Okay, So the suspicion was this for coronavirus as well. Currently, there's no evidence for this. I say currently because we still need more evidence. But a lot of data coming out right now of people who have been vaccinated and have had COVID, and we have not seen them get a worse COVID right now. So I would say no at the present moment, but please keep watching the data.
Okay. This person asked, my dad is 81 years old. He has a stroke around 3.5 months ago. And currently he's also taking blood thinning medication, epicephalin. On top of this, he's also taking atorvastatin, bisoprolol, and wow, I have problem with medical name, omeprazole. In this case, is it suitable for him to take the vaccine as well?
Again, many of these personal questions sounds more like a medical clinic, and I really want to recommend that you must have a regular physician, and I hope your dad has got a regular physician looking after him with those kind of medical problems, and they should actually sit down with you and work out the risk benefit for you. The main concern listening to the drugs is your blood thinness, and that's only because of the injection site. You may get a bit of a bump, a bit of a bleeding there, or a bit of a hematoma, it may bleed into the skin. I, for example, am on 2 drugs which affect my platelets because of my cardiac problem. So definitely after the vaccine, I'm going to be pressing very long. I'm not going to just put a plaster there. I'm going to press myself for 10, 15 minutes. I do that all the time whenever somebody takes blood or gives me an injection. So I would recommend that, you must tell them he's on blood thinners, and, somebody needs to press the vaccine site for longer and watch that it doesn't bleed there. That's about all I would say. But again, with that number of medications and concerns, see your regular doctor to discuss this.
Okay, thank you. What is the confidence by the health authority in handling the setback of different vaccines?
Sometimes this is a risk communication, it's how well we communicate. As I said, my wife and I are both, not happy that AstraZeneca is getting such a bad press. These are 2 migrants from who went to Germany, and then they produce this, and then they had no mechanism to company, they partner with AstraZeneca. It's wonderful people who have worked very hard to produce a vaccine for us. And notice that all the vaccine companies are not making much money out of this time. Okay, they're just trying to sell the vaccine to us at cost or a little bit above cost. They will make some money, but not very much. Okay, so I think it's risk communication if we share. For example, like Sinovac, I would like them to publish their data so the whole world can see it and we can talk about it. And then all regulatory authorities will say, hey, let's use this vaccine or not use this vaccine. Then we know for sure. So I believe it's how well the vaccine companies communicate, don't hide anything. Secondly is how well our governments communicate to us. I think governments must not hide anything. We are all in the same one big boat, trying to get out of this COVID nightmare that we are in. And I think it's transparent, honest communication. And there are 2 kinds of honesty. One, you tell some things which are true. Second, you tell everything. I'm the second kind. We tell everything. Good, bad, and ugly, we tell you, like the Norwegians do. Huh? Yeah, there may be some people who highlight this in the press and who and cry, but then we work through that and we share with you what this means for you. And then you can make good decisions. I think that's the way forward.
Okay. If a vaccinated doctor who does not know he or she is carrier is in close contact with a non-vaccinated person, can the non-vaccinated person be infected? Why or why not?
Okay, let me understand this. This is a vaccinated doctor.
Yeah, but he doesn't know that he's a carrier. And
when you mean by carrier, he means infected by COVID. Huh? We don't carry COVID, we get infected and then we
I would suppose that's...
So he's post-vaccinated and now he gets COVID, but he's not aware that he's got COVID. Maybe he got a mild COVID because of the vaccination. We don't know. I think the same answer to the one I gave earlier. We don't know whether this can be transmitted or not. We have to wait a bit longer for people to do enough studies to show this from happening. And that kind of studies are not necessarily going to be the easiest, isn't it? Huh? It's going to be, we can't say, okay, Amma get vaccinated right now, then Amma now we infect you and see whether you get infected or not. Then Amma, okay, you breathe on Yin Ming now and see whether she get infected or not. It's going to be unethical to do that. So it's going to be epidemiological community studies, perhaps done in old folks' homes, done in, medical groups and stuff like that, where we're going to see some of this data.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, did the vaccine selected by Malaysia successfully go through all appropriate regulatory channels?
So the regulatory authority that we have is our NPRA, our drug control authority. They vet all these. They are the ones who receive the documents. So when I said something by Sinovac, it just meant that internationally it's not published, but they may have received all the documentation that's required. The regulatory authority is very, very fussy as well. They do not want to approve any drug for you or vaccine item unless they're sure the data is good. Okay, of course, at this time, everybody has asked them to expedite their assessment. When I was in the Ministry of Health, I always got from the Drug Control Authority drugs or vaccines to vet. The minister send me the whole brochure. Here's all the data and all the studies. Amma, can you give us your independent opinion? So they do this with many people in the country all the time. At this time, of course, they would have done it faster with more individuals on board. So right now, they have approved 3 vaccines in our country: Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and Sinovac. I know that there's some pressure to try and approve the Russian vaccine because there's fears that we may lose the purchase of Russian vaccine if we don't approve it. But again, the regulatory authority will not bow to that kind of pressure. They will want to make sure the vaccine is safe before they approve it.
Okay. I accept that the trials have shown the vaccine to be safe, but how do I know that dangerous side effects won't show themselves in a few years' time?
Again, I think I tried to answer this, and let me try and summarize that answer. First of all, in all vaccines ever produced, the safety signals, the problems appear within 6 to 8 weeks, usually actually within a month or actually quite fast. So that's not appeared after 500 million doses of these different kinds of vaccines, of COVID vaccines. Secondly, all governments monitor side effects. Our government is very careful about monitoring side effects. As doctors, nurses, we always report side effects. The patient may not know, but we report the side effects without, of course, mentioning their name. Now, even patients are encouraged to report side effects, and this is happening in many countries. US also has got a clear systems, handphone-based, where people can report. So we are picking that up. Some fake news says, only 10% of all side effects are reported. So, we're not knowing them. That's not true. It's only 10% of mild side effects are reported, but all severe side effects are reported. Nobody has a severe side effect will sit down. They will go and consult somebody. They will go and see a doctor, and then that gets reported. So at the present moment, we have not seen any safety long-term signals except the acute ones, which means that some bleeding in the brain, even that is a maybe only, and people are still investigating them. The anaphylaxis is a real one, and that is a very small risk, as I tried to show to you, but a real one that we should be aware of.
Okay. Can we choose to go to hospital for vaccination?
I think we have to ask. Right now, the only criteria for that is you are high risk for allergies. You're going to get anaphylaxis. Then they're going to accept that. The rest of us are going to be in the clinics.
Okay. Is there a recourse for cases of severe allergic reaction to the vaccine, such as antihistamine to stop the allergic reaction to some situation? If so, how soon the intervention is required to save a life from COVID-19 allergic reaction?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. And I think there are 2 drugs that people use. One is antihistamines, the other one is adrenaline. Okay, and usually these are available at all our clinics we're vaccinating. They have got actually a game plan. I've seen the game plan, the chart of what to do if somebody develops anaphylaxis. So this is going to happen within the first 30 minutes, probably within the first actually couple of minutes, 5 to 10 minutes actually. So the 30 minutes is a good sort of a safety margin. So you're going to wait there in the clinic. We're not doing what the West is doing, vaccinating cars. Some of us have discussed among the doctors group, scared to see what happened in the car. I don't know what happened to you. Have anaphylaxis, nobody even know you collapse in the car, So for us, it's in the clinic, people are going to see you. So the moment it happens, the thing that people will do is lie you flat, raise your legs up to pull blood supply into your brain and give you one or both of these drugs, depending on the severity. That's what's going to happen immediately that people are going to do. So these things are ready and available. Okay. Again, if we can determine your risk, we do it in hospital. But it will still happen to somebody who have no risk, because it's allergic reaction means unexpected. We don't know who is going to happen to.
Okay, thank you. I have a mom who is 86 years old with high blood pressure, diabetic, and high cholesterol. Should she be vaccinated or should she wait?
if that was my mom, I would vaccinate her. If she's walking around, if she's a well person, despite those illnesses, if she gets COVID, she's at high risk of dying. So I would vaccinate her.
For vaccine to be truly proven, doesn't it take 15 years of testing and observation?
Yeah.
But the COVID vaccine had been tested for less than a year, maybe two. Can we trust the COVID vaccine?
Yeah, I think this has been hyped up by the anti-vax people. It must recognize why it takes so long to do vaccine. We could get a vaccine within a year or two quite easily, but why the vaccine companies don't do that? Because there's a financial liability, you see. You start out on a product, and then if you put all your money into that product and accelerate it to a thing, and then it doesn't work, you lost your investment. So vaccine development is extremely expensive, and many vaccine candidates never make it. They die along the way, and vaccine companies absorb that loss, which is why when vaccines first come out, they're quite expensive. If you remember all the vaccines like HPV when it came out, $120, $200 because of this hidden cost for research and development. In this time in COVID, governments, philanthropic organizations, other organizations, people with money have thrown money at vaccine companies, not millions, billions, and said, here is the money, we don't need it back, use it. So the vaccine companies have become very assured, and some people have supported 70 vaccine companies. Can you imagine that? Just hedge your bet, give as many as possible, because we are trying to solve a world problem. And so for this reason, the vaccine companies can accelerate their entire development plan. And secondly, they don't necessarily wait for one phase to finish. They can start the second phase. While they're doing phase 1 and halfway through it looks good, they can start phase 2. Thirdly, people have volunteered. Last time, sometimes I've done some vaccine studies as well, some research for vaccines as a pediatrician. And last time, to have to recruit people, you have to, actually work quite hard to persuade them to come for a vaccine study because they say it's experimental. Here, people have volunteered. In some of the studies, 40,000 people have volunteered for the vaccine study. So people have come forward to say, hey, I'm here to help. So I think this is the gratitude we should return to other people, both to the companies. I mean, I don't belong to a company, vaccine company, but also to the people who work very hard. You must recognize the entire science community, researchers have put their brain to this. I wish after the COVID is over, we put all our hearts and brains to ending poverty. And I suspect in 1 year, we can end world poverty, which is something I would like to see as well.
Okay. I understand that humanity has only eradicated only one human infectious disease comparable to COVID-19, and that is a smallpox. So previous effort to eradicate malaria, yellow fever have failed. Hence, are we expecting an endemic future whereby we will never ever eradicate COVID-19 totally?
Yes, that's a wise person who has been reading. Yes, that's probably our future. We're not looking here at eradicating COVID. By the way, the second disease that we can eradicate is polio. If you can get some countries who are, messy right now, very few countries, we can actually eradicate polio, and then we can stop giving polio vaccine to all children in the future. We should be wonderful. I think when we don't have to give a vaccine, we shouldn't give a vaccine. I think we only give a vaccine because of the nasty thing of the disease. So here we are aiming that we will vaccinate lots of us. And then what will happen is that, 2 or 3 possibilities, COVID dies out into some very mild illness, and then that's it, fine, good. COVID continues to mutate intermittently, and then means that, okay, we may end up like influenza, maybe a yearly or 2 yearly or 3 yearly booster once in a while, I hate to think of the worst case scenario that we cannot keep up and they keep developing more nasty mutations. That, of course, is something I always think about. But at the present, that doesn't seem to be the case. Those mutations seem to be it's more severe and faster spreading, but not something that we cannot address at the present moment.
Okay. Are the migrants allowed to get the vaccine now?
Yes, I think the government has come up with a clear stand that they want to vaccinate homeless, migrants, refugees, stateless individuals. My worry is that we have treated them badly in the beginning, we asked them to come forward, and then when they came forward, we caught all of them. So many of them are in hiding, or they don't trust government. So I think the way to do this is to work through NGOs. They trust the NGOs who work with them a lot better. And I think the government vaccination program for refugees, migrants, stateless should go through all the various NGOs in the country.
Okay. one more question. I think we will call it off. This had to do with okay. According to a report in New York Times, in terms of safety rankings, Sinovac is supposed to be the safest as there are minimal fatalities and serious side effects. Is there any truth in this?
I look at data. I don't look at opinions. Sinovac, of course, follows the old vaccine, so-called old. That may not be the old anymore. I think all new vaccines may be RNA vaccines in the future because they're much easier to produce once you can sequence the genome. So, it's an older technology, so people think it's safer. But I must tell you, they have not published their phase 3 trials. I want to see those. They have reported some of their safety signals in phase 3 trials, so we are aware of their side effects inside there, but we'd like to see this in a publication. Secondly, I have not seen the post-vaccine vaccination program data. Like you see, Norwegians, South Koreans, UK are showing to you what happens to Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and so on, Moderna, and so on. What is happening to Sinovac? We only see a little bit from Hong Kong. And if you read the Hong Kong media, you'll recognize the Hong Kong public have become very nervous because a couple of deaths after Sinovac. That is nothing. It could just be baseline, as I mentioned to you, expected deaths, but we need to get the good data on that. So I have not seen, for the millions of doses of Sinovac, I've not seen the data. I would like to see that data. Then I can answer this question that is as safe as the others. I want to see the anaphylaxis rates. I want to see the any safety signals that we have. This data, I'm sure, is available because, Indonesia, Brazil, and China will collect this data, and other countries are vaccinating. Perhaps Malaysia might be the first ones to publish this data.
Thank you so much, Amar. We really appreciate your time and your willingness to stay on a little longer to address some of the questions. And, it has been very helpful, very enlightening. And I believe that many of us have some of our doubts clear or some of the misinformation, clear as well. Really appreciate you. Thank you very much. And at this moment, I would like to hand the time back to our General Superintendent, Reverend Ong Sek Liang.
Before Pastor Ong, just a moment before you say that, can I just again emphasize to all of us, think of the big picture when you think of a vaccine. Discern with God, listen to the big picture. If you listen to one death here, two deaths there, 1 out of a million getting this kind of bad reaction, then I think that's a small picture. Think of the big picture of what we're going to do. Thank you very much. Sorry, Pastor Ong, back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amar. I have listened to quite a few, and I must say, this is the one that convinced me. I am going to register afterwards. Okay, it's really very intensive, very comprehensive, and we really want to thank you for spending time with us. I just have one final comment, and then we'll pray and for God's blessing before we go. The thought that really caught my attention was the introductory remark made by Dr. Amar when he said the bottom line is we have a trust deficit. We have a trust deficit. Well, today you have heard the professionals, you have heard the facts. I know you may have questions. As Dr. Amar said, continue to learn, continue to read, continue to ask. You should be able to trust your professionals. You should be able to trust God ultimately. I like what he said, ultimately. You have to go before God and ask him. You should be able to trust your government. And at the end of it, you should be able to trust your own conscience before God. Amen. Thank you very much, Pastor Wong, for an excellent moderation. And once again, Dr. Amar, we look forward to having you again, not only to remind us, but because you come across as a person who is very progressive, who is always learning, and we really want to glean more from your expertise and your learning. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for this time. We thank you, oh God. Ultimately, you are Jehovah Jireh. You are not only our provider, you are Jehovah Rofika, our healer, and you heal in so many ways, dear God. Lord, we pray that you will heal us, you will keep us strong, you keep us wholesome. We pray, oh God, for our government, as our government endeavor to find different ways to help all the people of Malaysia to overcome this COVID-19 pandemic. Give our government wisdom, give our government context, give our government favor in the sight of the world's community. We pray for Dr. Amar and also people like him, the community of professionals like him. Lord, use them to bring, oh Father, understanding. Use them to bring information that will bring stability and also confidence. Lord, we thank you for sending him to us. Bless him even as you bless all of us today. In Jesus' wonderful name. And everybody say, amen. Amen. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Amar. Thank you, Pastor Wong. And have a great week ahead. God bless all of you.